Thank you. So how do citizens feel about their own governments? How do they feel about other governments? Well, for the 8th year, the Alliance of Democracies Foundation has conducted the largest annual study of the state of democracy around the world. And the results of the Democracy Perception Index are always striking. This year, wouldn't you say particularly sobering? Definitely. Okay. We're going to get to them momentarily with Nico Jaspers. Nico is the CEO at NERA Data, which conducted the survey. Nico, first, the survey this year, even bigger, even better. Tell us how.
We've been doing this for 8 years now, and every time we do this, there's a half a year of preparation, everything goes into that, and then you see the data, and sometimes you're like, oh yeah, this is expected, and sometimes it's completely off what you would expect, and this year was one of these years. As Jean just mentioned, let's go. Normally we do just about 50 countries, 1,000 interviews in all these countries around the world. For this year, we decided to double it. We went to 100 countries, much bigger coverage in Africa, much bigger coverage in some of the smaller countries, which are also super relevant. We also asked a lot more questions, which we are publishing in different reports. There's so much data, I think 18 million individual answers that we collected. By the way, I see some of you taking pictures. That's perfectly fine. There's going to be a QR code at the end of the presentation, which you can scan to download the report. As every year we do a big report on this, where you have all the charts that you can look at.
So, big picture, what is the state of democracy?
Well, one of the things, Jean, that we always ask is how is democracy perceived in general? Are people satisfied with it, and so forth? And the good news, as every year, and this is one of these things that is always similar, is that a vast majority of people say democracy is important, and this is pretty much in any country in the world. There are maybe some countries where this is 50% or so, 45%, but most of the countries are in the 70s, 80%. Democracy is good. Now, there's been something that's been bugging us every year is this question, like, what do people think? What is democracy? And it's different in every country. It's different for different people. So this year, for the first time, we asked people, what do you think is the goal of democracy? And we gave them, do you see the slides, by the way? We gave them 4 different options. What do you think is the most important goal? Improving living standards, being able to freely choose your government, protecting individual rights and freedom, and promoting a fair society. The single most important thing. And the results here were super, super interesting, because more than half of the countries, I think 65% or so, said it's about prosperity and rising income levels and so forth. And a few countries in North America, Europe, some, and India said it's about individual freedoms. And then the rest was much fewer countries. So this is really important to keep in mind what people think is the goal of democracy, especially in the Global South, when they think of democracy, what it should deliver, which might be very different from what we think. We also broke it down into different components of democracy, where we asked, how do you perceive these things in your country? That's a bit more depressing, because people generally rate, except for the Nordics always. I mean, this is part of the reason, I guess, why we have the conference here. But in general, across the world, people rate their governments relatively poorly on this, and this applies to both democracies and autocracies.
So this conference is zeroing in on issues of security and defense. What were your findings in that regard?
Yeah, this is a new section that we didn't have last year, or in any of the last years. We had questions here and there. And we asked a bunch of questions. One of them was support for, the opposite of what Anders this morning said might make right, is a global order. Do you think your country should follow international institutions, rules, even if, and that's important, we always add these 2 questions, otherwise people always say yes to everything, even if that means limiting the freedom of your own country. And you have huge support. With the exception of sub-Saharan Africa, maybe it's because some of these people perceive these rules to be made not by them. So that's something to keep in mind. But overall, huge support. We then asked whether people are willing to fight if they are attacked. This is also really interesting. We see a lot of support in the MENA region, in India and some parts of Africa, and less support in Europe for this, which is something to think about. And then finally, we also asked the question whether people support an increase in defense spending. And again, here we don't just ask, do you support an increase in defense spending? We ask, do you support an increase in defense spending, even if that means higher taxes or cuts in other areas, which is very important because this is what normally happens, right? It's not free. And you see lots of support in Eastern Europe, lots of support in Northern Europe. In Italy and France, the picture a bit more mixed. In Germany, and we have to put this in perspective, in Germany, on the fence, I'm German, I'm from Berlin, so this is, I guess, a step into the right direction, because I think last year, a few years ago, this would have been probably on par with Italy or even below that.
So the results that really blew my mind had to do with the perceptions of the world powers and world leaders. Tell us about those.
Yeah, this is the thing that probably of all the results shocked us most. I came of age in the 90s, had an American flag above my bed, spent a lot of time in the US, lived there, studied there, and this is something that is actually quite depressing. We asked all those countries, all those 100 countries, we asked people there, how do you perceive other countries and how do you perceive world leaders? We didn't ask all the countries in all the countries, because otherwise we would have asked people, how do you like, whatever, Italy, how do you like, and then some people might be like, I actually have never been there. So we asked countries that they are familiar with, that are neighbors, that are trading partners, that are important countries for them. And then here's a ranking where we only looked at countries that got more than 5 reviews, I guess. The top one is, sorry, I have to look, I don't know this by. The first one is Switzerland, and then Singapore. And then towards the bottom, there's also, you see Israel, Iran, Belarus, and on the right column, and this in the report, you see how many countries ratings are there. So for some countries, we actually asked everyone. So Germany, the US, Russia, India, China, and on Israel and some others that are particularly relevant, we asked everyone in the world how they perceive these countries. So the fact that Israel is second to last is something that is also quite, maybe not striking to some, but worrying, and gives you pause for thought. The next one was something that was pretty shocking to us. Not so much that the perception, so we've been doing this for a few years now, not so much, this particular question, not so much that the US perception declined, but by how much it declined. And I have to add something, that this is actually a slightly positive picture, I have to unfortunately say, because last year we polled 50 countries. This year we polled 100 countries. This is for 100 countries. We also ran this for the 50 original countries, and the decline of the US is even steeper, so the original 50 countries, so the 50 largest countries in the world, is now getting on par with Russia, and significantly below China. So this is really something to think about. There are not that many countries who have a net positive perception in the world of the US anymore, and there are lots of countries that have a more positive perception of the US than China. Now, the reason for this is, at least to me, pretty clear. The US president is, of all the people that we polled on how do you perceive these global leaders, posed the worst around the world of any one of these. The only region where he has a slightly positive rating is sub-Saharan Africa. In Europe, it's devastating, especially with some other leaders that also have not a very good perception. sorry to end on that depressing note. This is the QR. This is the when we saw this, we were like, oh my God, you knew that something was going on, but this much. Here you can scan, you can download the report, and I'm going to be around today here, so come see me if you have any questions.
Nico Jaspers, CEO of Nira Data, thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so
even
much.
for these depressing results.